Hey guys. All right. So almost finished this unit. So quadratic equation. So we're talking about solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula is the topic for today. So in the previous video, guys, I proved the quadratic formula. Okay, so it just you guys do, and again, you do not need to know how to prove it. Okay, that was just kind of where the quadratic equation is, quadratic formula is coming from, and how we use it. Okay, so first question says, example, solve x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. Now this is the one I showed you over here is like, you can use the quadratic formula for any quadratic equation. Okay, so you can solve it by factoring or using the quadratic formula, and I'll ask you what you think is easier afterwards. So if I'm going to solve this one by factoring, this guy does factor to x minus 6, x plus 2. Quick check here, x squared plus 2x minus 6x is negative 4x. Negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. So that means either x minus 6 equals 0, that means x equals 6, or x plus 2 equals 0, and that means x equals negative 2. Okay? Hopefully you're going to see that, guys. This is actually the easier way of doing this question over here. It's like if you can factor it, factor it. Okay? It's going to be easier to do. Now the quadratic formula says is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, guys, this is on your formula sheet. You do not need to have it memorized. You just need to know how to use it. Okay. Now, here, guys, even though there's no number here, we know there's number 1 there. Okay. So this is ax squared plus bx plus c. And I know we have minuses in here, but that's okay. So that's telling us that a equals 1, b equals negative 4, and c equals negative 12. Okay, so these are what our a, b, and c values are. So in this case, x equals negative b. It's negative 4. So since negative b, it's this negative is this negative. My b value is negative 4, so it's negative 4 like this, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 12. Over 2a, 2 times 1. Okay, this equals negative 4 is positive 4, plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared is 16, negative 4 times 1 times negative 12 is positive 48 over 2 equals 4, plus or minus root 64 over 2 is 4 plus or minus 8 over 2, which is 4 plus 8 over 2, or 4 minus 8 over 2. Now 4 plus 8 over 2 is 12 over 2, which is 6, or 4 minus 8 is negative 4 over 2, negative 2. So the same thing that we got before. We got x equals 6, or x equals negative 2. Okay, so this is how we use the quadratic formula. Okay, now this is going to be effective on questions like this one, where you can't factor this one. Okay, and guys, completing the square is a bit of a pain like that. We're going to try to avoid that when we can, but we're going to use the quadratic formula instead for this one. Okay, so in this case, we know that our a equals 1, b equals negative 8, and c equals negative 2. Our formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals negative 8, so it's negative b. So again, since b is negative, we have to have the negative in front, but then b is negative, so it's negative 8 plus or minus square root of b squared, negative 8 squared, minus 4, a is 1, c is negative 2, all over 2 times 1, 2a. So we have x equals 8 plus or minus, negative 8 squared is 64, negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8 over 2 equals x, back this up. That means x equals 8 plus or minus root 72 over 2. Now Now what's root 72 equal? Root 72 is 36 times 2. Square root of 36 is 6 root 2. So we get 8 plus or minus 6 root 2 over 2. And what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to divide this by 2, and I'm going to divide this by 2 as well. Equals 4 plus or minus 3 root 2. In case you didn't see this, well, guys, I want to cancel out with this 2 in the bottom here. So if I factor the 2 over the top, it's 4 plus or minus 3 root 2 like this, like that. And then I have a 2 like that. So that this 2 cancels out with this 2 like that. And we have 4 plus or minus 3 root 2 is our final answer. Okay, so this is how we use the quadratic formula. Let's keep practicing it. Example 3. So in this case, A equals 4, B equals -5, and C equals -1. And we have X equals -B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC over 2A. So we have X equals -B. It's -5 plus or minus -5 squared minus 4 times 4 times -1, all over 2 times 4. -5 is +5. 25, -4 times 4 times -1 is 16. And this is our answer. Okay, so I guess taking further on, x1 is 5 plus root 41 over 8. That means x2 is 5 minus root 41 over 8. All right, same idea. Let's keep practicing this one. We know that A equals 6, B equals -3, C equals -8. We have X equals -B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC over 2A. Okay, so just plugging everything in. X equals -3 is +3. -3 squared is 9. -4 times 6 times -8. I'm just going to do that on my calculator. It's +192. 2 times 6 is 12. 9 plus 192 is 201. Okay, and this is as far as we can take this answer. We're not going to simplify this guy any further. We can't. Okay, so we have x1 is 3 plus root 201 over 12, and then x2 is 3 minus root 201 over 12. All right, last one. Okay, so this one looks a bit easier over here. This is just because I'm just going to change this to a positive x over here. I'm just going to change this question here. So 3x squared plus x plus 1 equals 0. So that means A equals 3, B equals 1, C equals 1. So we had, and our formula is x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So we have x equals -b, -1, plus or minus square root of b squared, 1 squared, minus 4 times 3 times 1 over 2a, 2 times 3. X equals -1 plus or minus. Okay, now this is 1 4 times 3 times 1 is 12. 1 minus 12 is negative 11. And hopefully you're seeing, guys, we have a bit of a problem here. So when we have this, we can't take square root of a negative number. Okay, so I'm going to say that is not in real number system. So when we get a situation like this, where we have the square root of a negative number, our solution is going to be no real solutions. And we're going to leave it there, okay? Because we're not allowed to take the square root of a negative number. We can't, okay? All right, guys, so that's how the quadratic formula works, and I hope that that makes sense. Okay, so guys, it's going to take a lot of practice. You have to do a whole bunch of these questions like that to get good at this idea, but this is how this one works.